right. So let's wait until a few people have taken their seats and welcome everyone to this fireside chat on corporate venturing. Let me see if my slides are working. So today I would like to talk to you about corporate venturing and open innovation together with our esteemed guest here, Michiel Scheffer, whom you've already seen in the session just before, who's the president of the board of the European Innovation Council, and Edelio Bermejo, who's the group head of research and development and innovation at the Holcim Innovation Center. There will be a Q&A included in the session. There's a QR code on top of the screen. Please take a picture of the QR code to be able to send us your questions, because I really like to do this in a more interactive way, as interactive as possible, if you ask me. Of course, I prepared some questions, but I'm sure your questions are much more interesting than the ones I came up with. So make sure you have the QR code and you're ready to share your questions with us. Before we get started, can we get a little bit of light in the room? And maybe it's nice to see, just by show of hands, how many of you are representing a corporate? No, there's a few of them over there. How many are startups here in the room? Great, so a lot of startups I see. And how many of you are investors? We have a very good mix in the audience, huh? So this is also good to keep in mind. And how many of you are incubators, accelerators? Also a few. Very good. So before we get started, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here. I mean, after all, I'm a professor. I work at Rotterdam School of Management. And my chair is on collaborative innovation and business venturing. So I really like to make sure that we're all in the same understanding here about what is corporate venturing. And this is the definition that I like to use. So corporate venturing is an instrument for larger companies to accelerate innovation with external input. And this means not only investing in entrepreneurs, so not only making corporate venture capital investment, but it actually includes a wide range of tools for corporates to work with startups, which can be through an equity investment, but can also include other tools such as joint development agreement, incubators, accelerators, etc. Just to give you an idea of what this looks like. So there's a lot of different flavors when we talk about corporate venturing. And you can also see that some of them are more applicable in the early stages of innovation or early stage startups, and some are more attractive when the startup is a little bit more mature. And I'm sure this is something that will also come back in the discussion today. But all in all, it means the provision of a lot of different types of support to help the startup grow. And it also means, and this is why I think it's so important that we have a session on this topic, bringing together different cultures that are vastly different and that face a lot of challenges in their collaboration. In fact, when you look at some of the statistics, we see that almost 80% of corporates has already worked with startups, but only about 60% of them believe that the collaborations are really successful. And when we look at the levels of dissatisfaction, it's actually quite high. So this also means there's a lot of challenges in this type of collaborations that are difficult to overcome. And this is why I think it's important that we talk about this with the European Innovation Council and with Holcim, who have experience in this area, to also share some of the best practices and some of the lessons for all of you in the room, what you can do to make these type of collaborations perform a little bit better. Good, so that's what I would like to talk about. How can we increase the return on collaboration? If you're interested, maybe already right now or at the end of the session, to learn more, we will soon be launching a report together with the EIC, Deal Flow and Hello Tomorrow, where we actually also show some evidence of how corporates and startups can work together successfully. There's another QR code. This one is to download the report as soon as it comes out. So please take note. I'm sure we will show it at some point again. Good. So that was the presentation part. Now, let's go into the conversation, right? First of all, let me turn to you, Michiel. So EIC is doing a lot to support startups. You have a lot of different programs to invest in startups and also help to accelerate them. Can you tell us a little bit about what the EIC does and particularly how EIC supports corporate startup relations?
Well, the main thing is that we are primarily a funding agency.
Mm-hmm.
So we fund startups. We don't fund corporates. We fund startups, and a side issue of that is that we promote that startups get into relationship with corporates. That's called a number of services under what we call the business acceleration services. But it comes in different stages. So we have, let's say, very early ones, startups that have already connections or have spin-offs of large ones. Then we have typically the activities of getting together in the main stage. And then you have, let's say, the exit where corporates can be in a venturing stage, become shareholders of them. So there are a different sets of interactions, also different by sector. For example, in the pharma sector, the chance is bigger that a startup is being taken over by a large corporate, because pharma use basically startups as a kind of seed bet for their own innovation. Whereas in others, it's rather, let's say, it could be a commercial relationship. So we deal with those as a whole. A point I made in the previous one is that it's a bit of a balancing act between thinking that we foster a new generation of entrepreneurs because the old one doesn't deliver, which one of my commissioners told me, and the other one is saying, well, that's a bit radical, and it's a bit also judgmental to generalize. It's really to create, let's say, ecosystems where the chance of success increases, so that your dissatisfaction level goes lower. So it's those two are balancing with each other, and I'm from an industrial background. In every industry, you have differences in attitudes. And so you cannot generalize all the cement factories or all the car manufacturers. No, some are more open than others. And it's also important for startups to understand the variety of landscapes. And understanding is important. And also, on the other hand, for large corporations to understand the variety of startups.
Yeah. And maybe if I can follow up on that, can you tell us a little bit about the criteria that you use when you select the startups that you invest in?
Well, what is important, I mean, the main instrument then is the accelerator. So we only fund deep tech. And deep tech can be defined in technology, so it's really technology based out of scientific knowledge. It's almost always proven by patents. Substantial patents awarded. And I also say, well, if you have a lot of nightmares ahead, it's probably deep tech. And so it will take some time before you feel that your bank account is going the right way. So you need patience, endurance, and on average, we are selecting companies in which we are providing patient capital. So stay 5 to 10 years on board. What is also very important is that the startup, maybe coming out of university, has to complement itself with a good CEO, a good CFO, and have also the courage to recruit people that help to scale up. And so we have a very small number of companies that have unicorn potential. We have a large one that becomes, I would call in German, Mittelstand, so the serious middle-sized companies, 500 people employed. But unfortunately, we have a lot of them, they will not survive the lab because they stay too small, too let's say, too internally oriented. So to go out is an important challenge, and to connect. And I'm a bit Dutch in that it's always better to speak with people than speak about people.
Well, interestingly, you also mentioned the long-term horizon and patience. How well does that connect with corporates, with the corporate environment?
Well, let's not be over romantic. Huh? In corporations, it takes time as well. I've been very closely involved in the development of PLA. PLA is a 20-year story before you have, let's say, from TRL 2 to TRL 9. So also corporations know it takes a long time. It's really what is very important in the dissatisfaction is to be able to match the level of impatience or the lack of speed. And so how do you align each other and you tease each other a bit to go one step further ahead?
Yeah. Maybe on this note, let's turn to you, Edelio. Do you want to tell us a little bit, first of all, perhaps introduce Holcim to the audience, because they may not be fully aware of the company, and maybe you want to tell us also a little bit about your strategy towards working with startups.
Definitely. So Holcim is a building material supplier, so we're making cement, aggregate, concrete, and we are very much delivering these products for the construction, for the buildings, for the infrastructure. We are 65,000 employees, 27 billions revenue in euros. And more importantly, we are dealing with a material which is extremely cheap. Just to give you the 2 cents comparison, 1 kilogram of concrete is costing 3 cents of euro. So that means that every time that we are delivering concrete, the delivery cost is very much important. Second element, which is quite important, cement is representing 8% of the CO2 emissions worldwide. The cement industry, not just us. So that means that we really need to decarbonize on the logistics and on the production itself. So these are the two challenges. So now back to your question, why it's important, why open innovation, why the startups? We have been very much looking at solutions internally. And what we found is that there are a lot of solutions externally that could disrupt the way we're doing that. And I'm sure that we're not the best ones to disrupt our own industry. So that's why we need some solutions coming from outside, not because we're stupid internally, but there are so many people outside that there will be ideas that will be extremely brilliant. The point is that we need to collaborate with the startups because they don't know our ecosystem. They don't know the difficulties that we can find. And just to mention the figures that I mentioned, 3 cents for a kilogram of concrete, they need to understand what is the ecosystem of the cement industry in order to adapt their solution to our needs. And to adapt as well their impatience to our lack of agility, which we have to recognize. We're big corporates, we're not that agile, we're not that quick in making decisions, but this is the strategy we adopted. Now, we are collaborating with startups that are helping us in our strategy. We are not a financial organization. We are not speculating on startups. If we invest in a startup, this is because this is at the core of our strategy, either decarbonization, digitalization, or circular economy. So that's the way we select these startups. First of all, this is a strategic investment.
And so you're really looking for startups that have a solution that you can further develop in-house?
Yes, that we can develop, and before investing in the startup, we test the startup for a while. So we can test the startup for 1 year without any problem. Even if the value of the company is growing, we don't care. But I prefer to invest in a company that I've tested, that is matching well with our mindset, even if I have to pay a bit more for the valuation of the company, which is increasing. I don't care, but I prefer to buy something which is working than a cheap startup which is not working. So that's why we take time in testing.
Also means a very close collaboration with the startup to understand this.
And we're helping the startup to grow because we're buying their technology and they don't do it for free. So that's a real collaboration.
So in the beginning, in one of the slides that I had, I showed different flavors or different approaches to working with startups. What is the approach that Holcim takes? Do you invest in them, or are you a lead customer?
Yeah. So first of all, we have a dedicated organization within the company that's called Holcim Maker, and this organization is made of people that with a mindset of startup or entrepreneurial people. And they're quite independent. They look at the startups that can make sense with the criteria that we all know. What is the TRL? What is the patent? What is the adaptation or the matching with the strategy of the group? And then, obviously, we test the company. We can start with a joint development agreement or with a commercial agreement, off-take agreement, or investing in the company directly. And then, something which is quite interesting in our company, this organization is, when I said independent, in fact, they are provoking the system internally. As I said before, we can be quite slow, we can be very bureaucratic, etc. So these organizations, they can propose to the executive committee to invest in a startup, and the executive committee has 2 days to decide. If there's no answer, by default, the investment is done. So there is kind of credibility and power given to this organization, Holcim Maker. We have another very important tool is the accelerator. And the Holcim accelerator is gathering different corporates on a very specific challenge. It has to be as precise as possible. For instance, circular economy for the construction industry. And then the accelerator is scouting per geography the different startups that could match, that could provide us some solutions. And then we partner for this accelerator, we partner with other companies like Amazon, Bloomberg, Acciona in Spain, Suez in France, Bouygues, the European Business School as well, etc., etc. So we partner with all of them. They are part of this Holcim accelerator for a specific season. And then we decide, after 6 months of testing the different startups, which one is the best, the most appropriate. And then everyone is free to invest or not in this company. Yeah. We are helping to make them fly. We are giving some visibility to the startups, and we are somehow testing the startup as well, and then we decide to invest or not.
What I really like about your approach is that you clearly also combine different flavors, and sounds to me as almost at a case-by-case basis you decide which one is the best solution. Now, on that note, let me turn back to you, Michiel. Is this an approach that you see also with other companies that or corporates that you work with? And how important do you think this kind of flexibility at the corporate level is for the startups that EIC has invested in?
Well, there's a very important thing that Edelio says is that the interaction can only be successful if both sides understands the constraints of the others. So you mentioned 3 cents a kilo. I'm from a polymer fiber world. It's €1 a kilo. But if you come with €7 a kilo, it's a luxury product. So what a lot of startups have to learn is that if you want something that is available for everyone, you have really to think of how to scale up and reduce the costs to be, let's say, a mainstream product. And too many of the startups remain in a kind of niche environment. Either they remain in niche, so in applications that are horrendously expensive, and you can complain about that, but the reality is that, well, we are willing to spend a certain amount of money for some things, or they never grow up because they're unable to get the dialogue with others. How do we get to this kind of price tags? Or, for example, in some applications, like in yours, you have to assure a lifetime of cement, 100 years. Yeah, so it's important to have the dialogue to understand that industrial constraints are not science fiction; they are real. So to have that dialogue is important, but it requires a patience of both sides. So I also see corporates that don't want to spend the time to do that. However, we have a very successful program of corporate days. You have done one. We have other cement factories interested in doing that. So the dialogue takes place. But you are in, let's say, big volumes, low value. We also had Thales we do Thales Alenia later this year. Yeah, that's small volume, very customized, high prices. So there are different contexts. And it's important to have those. And what is really a big barrier by now, and we have severely deindustrialized. I was still running as a kid in the factories of my grandfathers. You no longer can walk as a kid in the factory of a grandfather, and also the lack. We have a lack of knowledge of industrialization processes. So that's really something. And the ambition of the EIC is also to foster a reindustrialization of Europe. And in countries like in Netherlands and Germany and France, it's a very strong priority. Yeah, but we have to create again what is industrialization. We have lost that knowledge. So it's also something to do together.
Oh, and another question that came from the audience that I think ties in quite nicely is the question, at what stage should a startup look into collaborations with corporates? Is there such a thing as being too early or too late? And how do you look at timing of these kind of partnerships? I think it ties into your earlier point also about the mutual understanding of where you're standing and what your goals are.
There's no truth in that. So basically, you have to get in touch with others to discover whether you're too late or too early. That's not something you can read in a trade press or online. No, you have to use these kind of events to meet people and to discover where are we. Do I need to come a year later? Do I have to keep the relationship? So that's really an empirical learning by doing thing.
What is your take on that?
I'm very much in favor of TRL 5, 6 and above. Mm-hmm. Because industrialization then is quicker, and you mentioned we need to be patient, but the startup has to be patient as well. And being patient for a startup is not that easy.
No.
Because they are burning cash every day, they need to accelerate, etc. So it's important that as soon as they start burning a lot of cash, that's when they have already something which is tangible, close to industrialization, because if it's too early, I'm sorry, but the cash will be burnt before the right time. Mm-hmm. So TRL 6 and above, it's for us what we target.
You think that you're saying there's actually really a sweet spot there for the startups to at least look for you. One other thing that I would like to bring out, you mentioned the corporate days. One of the reasons that you are here is also to talk about not necessarily the corporate days, but about the collaboration that I think is a very successful one with a startup you met at one of the corporate days. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it? How did you meet the EIC? How did you come about to do a corporate day, and then what were the proceedings with getting to know Nanolike? And
so, in fact, it started 5 years ago, and the EIC approached us and saying, "Hey guys, this is our role. We're doing this. We're selecting and scouting some startups. Do you want to collaborate?" We started looking at that, and since we have been collaborating for the last 5 years, and we even hosted 2 corporate days in our innovation center in Lyon, and the collaboration is good. It's, to be honest, costing nothing. So that's for free. So that's the cheapest innovation they're scouting for us on topics which are extremely valuable for us. And then on our side, we are used as a guarantee or as experts because we know this industry, and then we can provide recommendations on this startup or that one. And this example of Nanolike is a French company from Toulouse, which developed a system of sensors that you're applying onto metallic silos, and you're managing the field level inventory of the silo, field of cement or aggregates or whatever, and you can manage that externally. So, and then through the cloud, you can manage the inventory of your customer. Before, the customer was calling us, ordering cement, we were delivering cement, and that was the way to proceed. Today, we are managing the silos of the customers thanks to that technology coming from this small company. A small company that came from EIC, the proposer, this company, we look at it. We found this is a strategic investment because it's very much related to the digitalization objective that we have, and we tested that. We tested that for roughly a year before deciding going into a more robust and commercial agreement, and finally we invested in the company. But very, very importantly, we need to check during that year, we needed to check that it works, that the market adoption is there. Sometimes the startup has a fantastic idea and they don't know how to approach the market. Sometimes we don't know ourselves how to approach the market with that fantastic idea. So we need to learn and to from each other and to define the right business model that could work. And today we are selling to our customers through that sensor which is managing everything, ordering and invoicing, etc. And we are managing the inventories of our customer, which is a benefit for us, a fantastic benefit for us, a fantastic benefit for the customers, thanks to that technology. So my message here is that it came from EIC. Many thanks. We developed the solution together, And this company today, Nanolike, is doing fantastically well, expanding now in more than 12 countries in the Holcim environment and even selling to our competitors, which is great.
Sounds like a beautiful story. I'm sure there
Yeah.
were also some challenges.
Yeah, definitely there were challenges. The first one is change. We don't like change. Nobody likes really the change, even if we're saying, yes, I'm ready for change, blah, blah, blah. But it's always very difficult. And it was difficult internally, in our organization. The guys, I just said before, they were waiting for the ordering from the customer in order to deliver. Now we're just managing the level of inventory. And then that's for our own salespeople, a very different way of communication with the customer. So that's the first point. The second point is we were, as I said, testing for a year. But the startup was telling us, hey guys, but why are you so long you tested that, you should buy it. Yes, that. And it's true. We're a big corporate company. We are long. Bureaucracy is sometimes a difficult problem. Plus the inertia coming from the salespeople themselves. Saying, hey guys, this technology is changing the way I'm interacting with my customer. So, and then we had to overcome all these, and today it works. It's a real success, and to be honest with you, that's not the same success with all the startups. So we need to accept failures as well. We have as well a list of startups where it has been a failure, so we need to admit it. But for the ones it works, and today that's a return on investment, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And I think it ties in actually really nicely with another question that came in from the audience, is also how do you then measure? How do you measure this success, but also how do you evaluate the risk?
Yeah.
Since you're not looking for financial outcomes, you're looking for strategic outcomes.
Yes, definitely. So measuring the success is like for any company. How many customers? What are the adoption in the market? How many silos installed? So the evolution of the market of the company is like any kind of company, except one point is that we can accept that for the first 2-3 years they will be in the red zone because they're just starting flying, and then we need to accept that, and that's something that has been accepted by your executive committee. And this is something that really for the corporate company, you need to work with your executive committee. If you don't have the support, these people are very much looking at an acquisition of a company or a startup collaboration. If they look at it as any kind of M&A, they are looking at immediate returns the year after. No, here we know that for the first 2-3 years, they will be in the red zone. That's normal. It cannot be on the red zone forever because then it's an issue, but we can adapt at least the first years and to be very flexible.
Yeah. Thank you. Let me turn to you, Michiel, again. Is what you're hearing, is this something that you see also across the board within EIC, with the corporates that you work with? Do you see other challenges as well?
Well, I recognize a number of points. I mean, once we have done a substantial number of corporate days, Holcim is one of the few examples where we have done several ones. AB InBev also, so some really come back every 2 years and to do a repeat. You make it a bit cheap. It's not so cheap. You have to offer the location of the starting session and the catering. And what is more important is that it only works to work together if the commitment is at the 2 levels, at the C-suite and in the organization. So people in the organization need to know that the executive body of the company is in favor of it. The other interesting thing is, and I have no solution there, but I have a fight with my second startup, with my co-CEO, because he said, we do it for nothing, the testing, because then we get a big contract. I said, no. We even charge 1,200 euros for testing. They get a rebate later. So it's also to see if you work with corporations, do you want to have, as a startup, some revenue in the beginning, or you see it purely as an investment? There's no secret formula here, but it should be discussed. So what are we expecting from each other? And indeed, that you also have the expectation. Some things take a year or 2 to test whether it works. So it's also, again, talk to each other and don't talk about each other.
Yeah. It's actually like in any relationship.
Yeah, but the cultures in Europe are a bit different in this.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know if you have an answer to this, but do you know how many of the your beneficiaries have a corporate as a partner or as a customer? Do you have any idea?
No, frankly, no, I don't know, because we have 706 beneficiaries. It is a very moving thing, so it's not something we have, let's say, a weekly data on. And it's also not, frankly, it's not a KPI for us either.
No.
So for us, an important traction is, yes, we measure the number of contracts arranged through the corporate day, so that's something we monitor. But a lot of interactions happen outside the corporate days. I mean, there's no obligation of doing that. That's the second thing. And for us, basically, the most important KPI is the financial traction that the startup gets.
Yeah.
And that can be in the form of making turnover together, or of participations, or let's say of activities that generate more value, so that basically more VCs invest into it.
No. And that could also be a corporate VC, but that's not something that you specifically.
It could also be a corporate VC, and personally, I would say I would like to see more corporate VCs. I think that the landscape is not as good as 20 years ago. So where, let's say, you had more, let's say, diversified conglomerates like AkzoNobel or Philips with several activities. A lot of these larger corporations in Europe have gone back to a core activity and have become a bit more short-sighted in terms of what we do.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what needs to happen for that to change? How can you and also seduce corporates such as the ones that are here, but perhaps even more so the ones that are not here, to invest in startups?
Well, what we see a bit is that, let's say, there is a very strong philosophy of sticking to your core activities, a very, let's say, financial way of running companies. And when you see how companies die, they don't die because they have been good in cost cutting. Generally, they die because they're on the wrong paradigm. And the troubles we have with the European car industry is not that they are too cheap or too expensive. No, they have been late in designing cars that are a cinema, and they are late in electrifying. So the biggest risk of let's say demise of big companies is a wrong understanding of the paradigm. And that's what I hear in you is basically you need to have, let's say, a fringe of curiosity around yourself. One of my former clients said, I always have 15% of my R&D budget not allocated. I want to have the freedom to experiment. So corporates need, again, maybe 15% is a lot, but you need somehow a space to experiment, to get, let's say, interactions that challenge the existing order.
Yeah, and to also make really investments or collaborations in areas that are not so obvious. But maybe let me ask then this question to you. How much really space do you have to act out of curiosity?
We have today 75% which are dedicated to our core project, and the 25% remaining is somehow free allocation, but not on anything. So it has to be related to the strategy, which is core to the business. So that's again some freedom, but some freedom that has to be justified by the topic itself, which is absolutely strategic.
Maybe let me turn to some of the questions in the audience here. One that I like a lot for you to reflect on is a practical question. How do you set up a collaboration like the one with Nanolike? How do you get through to the right people within the organization? And what are some of the important factors to maintain a good relationship?
So first, we start by an NDA, which is very, very common. Then we start testing the product or testing the solution. And for this, we have a frame agreement in order to, and it's a kind of a commercial agreement. We're testing, we're paying for it. So that's not for free. So we pay for the solution, we test it, and we make sure that we have the adoption by our companies, by the operations, by the ones that will be using it. And then we involve these guys from the beginning just to make sure that they will be the ones buying the solution. I'm just a corporate guy in in a multi-corporate company. So I don't have the power to say to the operations, you should test and you should buy that solution. No, they will buy. So the internal adoption is extremely important. So then we test it for a year, 6 months, whatever, the time which is needed. And then we have kind of agreement. We're taking some equity. Usually we're taking a minority shareholding, not more than 20-25%, because we want the startup to be in the driving seat. We will not be running the startup on their behalf. We'll be helping them. We will be buying their solution. Venture client is, for me, the best solution because you have kind of accelerator included in the system, and that's the best way to. So it's quite simple. We're sorry, I forget. We are dedicating some experts, which are quite good on that area, and that's it. So it's not a very complex situation, not a very complex relationship. When it goes well, when it starts going not that well, so it's becoming like any relationship. It's more difficult to manage, and then we overcome it,
now,
or not.
When I hear your story and your reflection on the joint testing, and it actually took up to a year, I imagine that the startup, Nanolike in this case, might at some point also have considered working with other companies, perhaps even working with your competitors. How do you look at exclusivity in this, let's say, the dating phase of the relationship?
For us, no exclusivity. If at the end we want absolutely exclusivity for that company, we just acquire the company and full stop. And this is ours, and that's it. What we want is, if we just want a minority shareholding, is that we believe that this startup and the strategy behind will help us, but it will help us even more if my competitors are buying that technology. And the fact that I have 30% in the company, well, fantastic. I will perhaps envisage 51 in the future or even more, but I absolutely don't want to block them, because otherwise that means that the solution is not as relevant as we think if it's only working for us.
For you. Yeah.
If it's working for my competitor, this is the best proof this is a fantastic company.
Yeah. I see you nodding, Michiel.
No, I have a technical problem. I'm diabetic. I have to do a toilet rush.
Okay.
So I'm back in 2 minutes.
Sure.
I'm sorry, but Novo Nordisk.
Maybe then coming back to you. Well, I need to come back to you because you're the only one here now. You also mentioned that you're ideally looking for a technology that can be adapted and taken in-house. This is also a question from the audience. If you, in this case, are you typically looking to licensing agreements, or, well, you mentioned full acquisition if you want exclusivity. How do you look at that?
All options are open from the beginning. So we can have, just as I said, a joint development agreement, and we can improve the solution of the startup, or we can go into licensing, and then we are buying the solution from licensing the solution from the startup, or we can even go beyond that, which is investing in the company. So we are very much open, and we have many kinds of collaboration with many startups. So we have roughly 120 something startups collaboration today alive. That means that it's either an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, or a GDA, joint development agreement, or a commercial agreement, or investing in the company. So that's very much open, and it's evolving with time and with the experience we have with the startup.
So one of the trends in corporate venturing is also corporate venturing squads. Have you heard of this? It's actually the phenomenon where multiple corporates join forces in working with a startup. Because you're saying we're very open to any model. How do you look at this? Would that be an option for
Yes,
Holcim?
that's an option which is already existing through the GCCA. GCCA is the Global Cement and Concrete Association. All partners are cement or concrete makers. We are all part of that association. And this association has today open Innovandi, which is the open innovation, for the industry. Because we thought that if we're just gathering all our efforts, if we're just collectively pushing for these solutions, that will accelerate the decarbonization and circular economy in our industry. So it's already existing, and it's more complex in terms of relationship with the startup, because obviously it has to be very compliant, etc. But it works.
Well, it also sounds as if this is a model that is very applicable when you're trying to solve bigger, let's say, industry-wide problems.
And the benefit, benefit for the startup is the visibility. Working for the industry of cement or concrete, the worldwide association. Wow, that's something. Sorry.
Yeah, two things on this. I mean, one thing, we have those corporate days. We also have multi-corporate days. So, for example, we had one on fermentation with food industries. We had several multinationals in front of, let's say, the startups. One was in chocolate, the other one was in yogurt, the other one was in beer. So you apply the same technology in different products, and they don't compete with each other. The same thing, I think, that the one you have is a huge one. Decarbonation is a challenge in brick industry, in the concrete industry, in the paper industry, in the steel industry. So something we could typically organize with an industry association is basically how do we have solutions that can be applied in several companies. I mean, and if a competitor of Holcim comes up, I had already in contact, we do it with them as well. Yeah, and it's of course up to the startup also to be aware of, have I granted exclusivity or not? Was that fair or not? And I'm very happy with companies that say, well, in some cases we don't want exclusivity.
Yeah.
And if you want, that's fair as well, but that should be clear as well. And let's say commercially, industrially logical.
It's interesting that you say it's up to the startup to make sure that they're taking the right decision here. I imagine that EIC or other investors also, I mean, you have an interest in what kind of agreements that they make. To what extent do you coach them when they work with corporates?
Well, in the case of a corporate day, there's a lot of coaching before, during, and after. But coaching is nevertheless an important activity we offer. It's not compulsory. So we offer coaches, but some startups know very well whose coaches they need to. Some work in a regional ecosystem or are funded by a regional development bank, for example, and have a system that helps them. One thing we really look at, and it's also the difference between the excellent one, the very good ones, and the moderate ones. The best one are very open or very targeted in looking for the right advice.
Yeah. Maybe I'm also looking at the clock. Now we talked a lot about what corporates can do, but we have quite a few startups also in the room. What are, if you could give one piece of advice to startups in the room that are interested to work with a corporate or that have already, connected with maybe even today or yesterday with a corporate. If you could give one piece of advice to the startups in the room, what would it be?
Well, a very fundamental one, but that's inherent to the whole EIC system. We are a minority shareholder, we have other minority shareholders, and the founders often also are substantial, but minority shareholders. So the formula of the EIC is based on the fact that the founder basically borrows the company for a while, and in some stage it will exit. If you want to become filthy rich, do that within your next company, but not with us. So the willingness to be open and to protect the openness is an essential element. If you don't have that, if you want to build your party on your own, fine, do it without us. So the EIC has that element of basically transforming Europe with the help of startups, but a bit cynical, the startups is for us a tool. We love you, but we love you because you help Europe as a whole, and maybe the world as a whole.
On my side, I would give two advices. The first one is, let's make sure that you have an industrial or company investor and not just financial institutions or corporate ventures, etc. So you need the one that will test your product, that will provide you the visibility because they are a real customer of your solution. And that will help you to fly by far quicker. The second element or advice is we really need to manage expectations when we are investing in a startup. So my recommendation to the startup is do not overestimate the potential of the company. It's better to be humble, to deliver what you promise. I see quite often figures that are unrealistic, because obviously it's making the business plan more beautiful, great. It's easier to get access to the money because it's really, really beautiful. But if after 1-2 years you are by far not expecting or not reaching what was expected, that's at the end, that's not a good strategy. So that's my recommendation. And the reason why I'm saying that is that access to funding will be more and more challenging in the years to come. And it's already more challenging than in the last 10 years. So there will be a natural selection. What I call the natural selection is that the survival will become stronger, but there will be companies disappearing even quicker than before. So don't overestimate the potential of the company. Start small. Think about scalability immediately. Dream big, obviously, but don't promise too much, because then deception can just kill the relationship with the company or with the corporate.
And on that note, I think it's time to conclude the session. So let me thank both of you very much for sharing your your experiences and your wisdom in this area. And thanks everyone for also bringing your questions and having a good conversation.